I've been a hockey strength coach for over 5 years now, and today I'm going to share with you the mistakes that I've seen hundreds of hockey players make when training in season. Training has now become a year round thing, and it's a prerequisite to entry at the higher levels. So, getting your training dialed in and avoiding these key mistakes is what's going to allow you to reach those next levels. So I've boiled this list down to 7 key mistakes that I've seen hundreds of hockey players make. And number one is treating the in season like it's the off season. Most athletes have a pretty good understanding of how to train during the off season because the goal is generally just to be bigger, faster, and stronger, and you don't have the time commitments of hockey. In season, the waters get a little bit muddier because you have the time commitment of practice schedules, playing schedules, and travel schedules. Right away, the frequency at which you train in the off season should tell you that you cannot do this in season. In our programs, we train our athletes 4 to 5 times a week, again with the goal of just being bigger, stronger, faster, and focusing a little bit more on hypertrophy. In season, our athletes only train 2 to 3 times a week, and the focus now shifts to more towards strength and speed. Part of the reason we make this shift down to 2 to 3 times a week is simply because there's not enough time during the season. We've already talked about how jam-packed a hockey schedule is with practices, games, and travel. And even if you did get over that hurdle of finding the time to train in season 4 to 5 times a week, that's simply not enough time to recover given that you're playing games and practicing throughout the week. And secondly, you don't even really need to train that much in season because when you're training in the off season, hopefully your training is to become a better hockey player. So what you do in the weight room should support what you're doing on the ice. In season, you're playing so much hockey that hockey itself is taking care of a lot of the stimulus that we would be training in the gym. And so for this reason, you simply don't need to train as much. You simply just need to get in there 2 to 3 times a week to supplement what you're not getting on the ice. The second biggest mistake I see is just not training at all. And this is just as bad for the opposite reasons. I've seen a lot of athletes tell me, I'm a hockey player, why do I need to train anyways? So when the season rolls around, they just stop training completely because they're playing so much hockey and they think that's going to take care of all of their needs by playing. But this couldn't really be further from the truth. As I said before, hockey's going to top up a lot of the qualities that you train for in the off season, but it won't top up all of them. So training in season is about giving the body or giving the athlete what you're not getting on the ice. So if you're not training at all in season, the qualities that you worked really hard for in the off season, like speed, strength, and power, are going to drift further and further from baseline, and you're going to enter into next off season at a worse state than when you entered it. And not only that, because you're not targeting certain muscle groups that hockey either overworks or underworks, you're putting yourself at a larger risk for injury because you're not preparing the tissues for the demands of your sport. And so as the season drags on, you become more susceptible to injury. And this is where we see athletes getting things like groin injuries because the hockey stride is so tough on the groin. And if you're not taking care of those things in the gym, you're going to get injured when it actually matters later in the season. Now, number 3, I kind of already alluded to, but it's training the exact same things that on ice gives you. So, as I've stated a number of times now, training in the in season is about giving yourself the qualities that hockey does not. And so if you're going in the gym and you're training the same things that you're getting on the ice, that means you're doubling up and we're heading down that road of overuse injuries. Now, as a strength coach, part of my job is to design a program that's going to supplement your sport. So as a hockey strength coach, I take a look at what hockey provides in terms of a weight room stimulus during the season. Because you're playing 4 to 6 to 7, 8 times a week via games and practices and all that sort of thing, we take a look at the sport and we see, what does the hockey stride give you from a weight room perspective? What energy systems are dominant in the sport of hockey, and what does that give you from a conditioning perspective? And we go through this whole checklist to say, these are the qualities that hockey gives you. And then what I do is design a program that supplements that and gives you the qualities that the sport of hockey does not give you, so that we're leveling all those qualities up as one. Now, the mistake here that I see with players that decide that they want to design their own programs is that they just train the things that they trained in the off season to make them better at their sport. And intuitively, this makes sense. In the off season, I trained power to get more powerful on the ice. But if you're doing this in season, you're just doubling up on that quality because hockey is a very high impulse, power dominant sport with heavy contacts. So if you're going in the gym and you're providing the body with those same stimuluses, those dumbbell jumps or those loaded jumping, high impulse type activities, then you're doubling up on those qualities. And we're back to number 2 and number 1 here, where you're just doubling up on the qualities and you're going to lead yourself towards overuse injuries, or you're going to lead yourself to under recover and not be able to prepare on game day. Now, mistake number 4, I've already alluded to a number of times in this review, and that is under recovering. So if you think that you have to train everything that you did in the off season, in the in season, you're going to end up running out of time, and you're going to have to train 4 to 5 times a week to fit everything in. This means you're not going to have enough time between practices, between games to recover, and ultimately your hockey performance is going to suffer, which in season, hockey should be the main goal. Getting better at hockey and performing on game day is always the goal for in-season athletes. To avoid this, you use a 2 or 3 day split that goes on a high-low kind of cadence. So you alternate your high days with your low days. So what that means is you need a high stimulus day followed by a low stimulus day that allows you to recover. Things like hockey practices, games, and everything of that nature is high stimulus. So we do our workouts on those days. Keep your high days high and your low days low. And this allows you to alternate stimulus throughout the week and throughout the season, which allows you to recover for the next practice, the next game, or the next tournament. Now, number 5 is similar to number 4, but it's just not having a plan for in-season training. So a lot of players, like I alluded to, choose to do their own training, and that is completely fine. But you have to have a plan if you're going to do this. A lot of players I speak with choose to just throw a workout in wherever they have time, wherever they have a day off, or wherever they have a free hour. They just throw a random workout in. And again, it all comes back to recovery. So if you're just finding days off, or you're finding an hour off somewhere to toss a random workout in, then you're probably not taking into account the stimulus that we talked about in mistake number 4, which means you're probably under recovering, which means you're not ready to play on game day. And so if you are going to do your own training, you need to set out at the start of the season with a plan. You need to know what your training is going to be, what days you're going to train on, and how it differs throughout different points of the season when you have different competitions, different tournaments, and when playoffs come around. Your training should change, and you should have that planned in advance so that you're not caught off guard when these things happen. Now, number 6 is a big one, and this is a lack of foot and ankle training. This is hands down the most neglected body part in hockey training. It's neglected by players, and it's neglected by coaches that I've seen training hockey players. Now, this is a whole topic for a separate video, but essentially the foot and ankle is how you apply force into the ground. And so if it's weak, you're not going to be able to apply force very effectively into the ground because you have a weak link in the chain. So you could have the strongest hips in the world to produce the strongest stride ever, but if you have a weak foot, then you're not going to get that power into the ground effectively, and it's going to cause energy leaks, and you're going to be wasting your time. So training the foot and ankle is paramount in hockey to begin with, but it becomes even more paramount in season because you spend 6 to 8 months locked in a rigid skate boot. So we already established that you're probably practicing 3 or 4 times a week. You probably play 1 to 3 games per week. And so you're spending a lot of time locked in a rigid skate boot that doesn't allow your foot and ankle to move. So when you get in the weight room, if you're not getting barefoot and working on this complex directly, that's 6 to 8 months that it receives no work at all. And it's going to become very, very weak. And then when you roll into next off season and you start doing speed and power training, you're going to spend a lot of time working on something that you could have just maintained throughout the season. And it's going to affect your ability to produce power in the off season and get better throughout the off season. And rounding out this list is another quality that most players and even some coaches miss again, which is doing direct speed work. Now, I know what you're thinking. Speed work, you said that we train the things that hockey doesn't give us. Hockey's a super fast sport. I agree. Hockey's a very fast sport, and it's becoming faster every single day. But weight room speed and hockey speed are two different things. The speed on the ice is very fast. The game is very fast. But from a nervous system and muscular tissue perspective, what is happening in the body is not all that fast. Again, it's more of a power stimulus, like I alluded to earlier. And so this lends itself in the weight room to more things more like acceleration type work. So high impulse things like we alluded to earlier, loaded jumping, heavy contact acceleration type work. And so for that reason, we need to supplement with 1 to 2 speed sessions per week in the weight room that focus more on high output sprinting. So sprinting as fast as you can, high output jumping, quick contacts, So this is a twofold bang for your buck because it's going to give you the high output stimulus that you need, but it's also going to keep your nervous system on high alert. And it's also not all that fatiguing if you program it correctly. And so you're not going to need that much recovery to recover from it. So you get a twofold nervous system being heightened and your recovery not needing to be that much. And so if you do these closer to game day, you're going to come into game day feeling really fresh, really snappy, and really quick to go out there on the ice. And this is one of the main reasons that our players see year over year success on our programs, is because we dose them quite regularly with speed work and the other qualities that they don't get on the ice. And so they come into the next off season feeling really good, and we can just build off what we did last off season. So we continue to go up versus going baseline when we start the season and then we drop off throughout the season because we didn't train or we trained incorrectly. And then you enter next off season worse than when you came out of it. And so you're never actually getting any better. And you can start to implement this too. If you take these list of 7 mistakes and you start to clean those up in your own training, you will also be able to enter next off season on a high, and you're going to be able to build year after year and get better year after year versus chasing your tail all the time. And so that's it for us today. If you found this video helpful, I'd encourage you to give it a like and a share because it's the only way that this channel can grow. And if you don't want to put in the legwork of cleaning up all these mistakes on your own, you can hit the link down in the description and you can try out our training team for a month and you can get 15% off using the discount code MEMBER15 at checkout. Leave a comment or shoot me a message if you guys have any questions about what we talked about, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.